Before the earth had mountains, before the seas roared, before the first star was placed in the heavens, there was only glory, a realm where light had no shadow, where love flowed like breath, where every being moved in perfect harmony under the gaze of the Almighty. And among the hosts of heaven, two figures stood closer than brothers: Jesus, the Word, eternal, uncreated, the radiance of the Father's glory, and Lucifer, the shining one, adorned with splendor so breathtaking that galaxies would pale in comparison to his beauty. They walked among sapphire skies and oceans of starlight, a kingdom of peace, a chorus of praise. No war, no envy, no separation. But something changed. One day, in the mystery of eternity, a question rose in the heart of an angel, a question that had never existed before. Why should the sun be exalted above me? It was a thought so small, so silent, yet powerful enough to shake the foundations of heaven. And that is where our story begins. Not with fire and war, but with a whisper. Let me ask you, have you ever seen pride begin as something tiny? A spark that becomes a wildfire? A thought that turns into a storm? If so, stay with me, because today we're diving into the moment before the rebellion, the moment when heaven stood still, and the Son of God watched a friend, a brother, walk toward eternal ruin. This is not just history of heaven. This is a lesson for every heart that has ever wrestled with identity, pride, purpose, love, and the pain of losing someone you once called family. But before we go deeper into this journey, if you're new here, welcome to Gospel Insights. Make sure to like, subscribe, and click the bell icon so you never miss a deep, spirit-filled teaching like this. Your support helps us bring more powerful revelations to people around the world. Before anything we know existed, before stars were scattered into galaxies, and before time began its long unfolding, there was only God. Not in silence, not in emptiness, but in the fullness of perfect love. The Father, the Word, whom we would later come to know as Jesus, and the Holy Spirit existed together in absolute unity. There was no conflict, no tension, no sense of separate roles, no division. Just the eternal exchange of love, joy, and purpose. Three yet one, deeper than human language can explain. From this overflowing love, God created the heavenly realm, a place of breathtaking beauty. Imagine colors that do not exist on earth, melodies that do not repeat or fade, light that does not burn but embraces. This was heaven before anything went wrong. It was not a kingdom built on fear or rule. It was a home built on presence. Every angel existed in a state of joy simply because they were near God. Among these beings, one angel stood out in craftsmanship and radiance. His name was Lucifer, meaning light-bringer or morning star. His beauty was not the kind that others envied. It was the kind that inspired awe. His very being shimmered with reflections of divine glory, as though every facet of him was designed to capture and return the brilliance of God's light. Lucifer did not earn this beauty. He did not forge his power. He was given it, formed intentionally, made magnificent on purpose. God made him that way, and at the center of heaven's glory was the Word, Jesus. Not Jesus the man yet, but Jesus in his eternal form. The radiant, infinite, uncreated Son of God. Angels did not simply acknowledge him. They adored him. They sang because of him. They existed through him. Scripture later explains that all things were created through him and for him, meaning Jesus was not only present, he was the origin and meaning of everything. Every beam of Lucifer's beauty came from him. Every spark of Lucifer's wisdom flowed from him. Every chord Lucifer led in heavenly worship was a response to the glory that emanated from him. Lucifer knew this, and for ages upon ages, he rejoiced in it. Worship in heaven was not forced. It was not commanded. It was natural. Think of breathing, how the body simply does it without asking. Worship in heaven flowed from love. It was the atmosphere, the language, the culture of God's kingdom, and Lucifer was deeply woven into it. He stood near the throne. He directed choirs of angels. His voice carried harmonies that could move the heart of heaven itself, and Jesus, the Son, was at the center of it all, shining with a glory that could not be compared. This was not the glory of arrogance or dominance. It was the glory of love so pure that it drew admiration without effort. When beings looked at Jesus, they were filled with joy. When they listened to him speak, wisdom flowed into them like light into a crystal. To be near him was to understand peace. To behold him was to understand meaning. Lucifer did not simply know Jesus, he walked in his presence. He beheld his beauty. He was close enough to see the humility of God's heart, and this is important. Lucifer did not begin as a rival. He began as a worshiper. He began as one who delighted in the sun, but something subtle began to shift that it did not happen in a moment. Sin never does. Pride does not introduce itself loudly. It begins softly, almost invisibly. A seed, a whisper, a small comparison that has the potential to grow if it is not confronted. Lucifer began to notice how heaven responded to Jesus. The way the glory always moved in his direction. The way songs were always to him and for him. Lucifer was admired, but Jesus was worshipped. Lucifer was respected, but Jesus was exalted. Lucifer reflected the light, but Jesus was the light. And for the first time in the history of existence, admiration no longer felt enough for him. Lucifer began to wonder what it would feel like to be the one worshipped, to be the center, to be the one angels sang to, instead of the one who leads their voices. He did not yet hate Jesus. He did not yet reject heaven, but he began to desire something that was never his to hold. The tragedy is not that Lucifer was evil from the beginning. The tragedy is that he was once near to God's heart and slowly chose to turn away. And through all of this, Jesus saw him, not harshly, not with disgust, not with condemnation, but with heartbreak, because love always sees the wound forming before the wound breaks open. Jesus saw the pride beginning to grow in the one who had once stood closest to his glory. He saw the longing for something that would never satisfy. He saw the silent distance forming long before Lucifer ever spoke a word of rebellion. And the hardest part of love is letting someone choose. The light still shone. The song still rose. Heaven was still at peace, but everything had already begun to shift. The story of rebellion did not begin with war. It began with a slow, quiet turning of the heart. Rebellion in heaven did not begin with noise. It did not begin with violent outbursts or open defiance. It began quietly, almost gently, in a place so subtle that no angel heard it and no outward sign revealed it. It began in a thought. A private interpretation of identity. A shift in perspective so small that it would have seemed invisible to anyone watching. And yet, that single shift would become the dividing line between worship and war. Lucifer continued to carry out his duties flawlessly. His voice still led angelic choirs in glorious harmonies that trembled through heaven like rivers of music. His presence still inspired admiration. He still walked in the gardens of heaven where flowers glowed like living jewels and the air shimmered with peace. Nothing about his outward life suggested a change. To every eye that saw him, he remained the morning star, the radiant herald of praise. But inwardly, something was changing. Lucifer began to reflect on the honor given to him. He had always been respected among the angels, admired for both his beauty and his leadership. But admiration was not the same as worship. And when the heavenly hosts lifted their voices in adoration, it was always toward the throne, always toward the Son, always toward Jesus. Christ was not simply superior. Christ was beloved, the center, the one to whom all creation bowed, not from fear, but from understanding. He was the source. Lucifer began to consider the difference between receiving admiration and being the one who is adored. It was not that he hated God. He did not begin in anger. He began in comparison. He began to think about identity outside of origin, to imagine greatness detached from the one who provided it. What once filled him with joy began to feel limiting. What once felt like privilege began to feel like confinement. The light that once reminded him of belonging began to feel like something he wanted ownership of, rather than reflection of. And because he was influential, subtle in wisdom, and deeply trusted, Lucifer did not act alone. He began to speak with other angels, not in the language of rebellion, not in accusations or bold declarations, but in thoughts carefully framed as curiosity. He asked questions that sounded philosophical rather than defiant. Questions like, what defines greatness? Or is glory not something that could be shared more broadly? Or if God created us with brilliance, does that not imply we are meant for more than admiration? These were not questions meant to find truth. They were designed to shift perspective. And because heaven had never known deceit before, many angels did not recognize what was happening. They thought he was reflecting deeply, perhaps contemplating the nature of purpose. But in reality, he was reshaping the idea of worship. He was introducing the possibility that creation could rise to the level of the Creator, and Jesus saw this, not with suspicion, but with grief. He saw the slow departure of a heart that had once burned with pure love. He saw pride forming the same way a storm forms on the horizon, not all at once, but gradually, beautifully, ominously. Jesus understood what Lucifer was becoming before Lucifer understood it himself. Yet, he did not force Lucifer to return to humility. Love has never been sustained by coercion. If loyalty must be demanded, it is not love. If worship must be enforced, it is not worship. So heaven became a place of quiet division long before it became a battlefield. Some angels continued in worship with full clarity, unaffected and untroubled. Some noticed new restlessness within themselves, though they could not explain why. And some, drawn to Lucifer's confidence, began to echo his unspoken desire, the longing to be more, to rise higher, to be seen, to be central. They did not believe they were turning against God. They believed they were stepping into something greater. This is the true tragedy. Rebellion often masquerades as enlightenment, what Lucifer introduced. To heaven was not hatred of God, it was the belief that proximity to God made one equal to God. It was the belief that honor was incomplete without adoration. It was the belief that creation could rewrite the meaning of glory, and in that unseen, unspoken shift, the atmosphere of heaven changed. Not in its beauty, not in its sound, but in the orientation of the heart. This was no longer just admiration of the sun. This was the beginning of competitive glory, and the moment a created being believes it can stand beside God. Rebellion is no longer a seed, it is a movement. The tension in heaven did not erupt suddenly. It grew like a gathering storm, silent at first, shaping itself in the unseen spaces of thought and desire. The angels continued their duties. Worship continued. Light continued. But beneath that harmony, loyalties were quietly shifting. It was no longer simply about admiration for Lucifer. It was becoming alignment. Alignment of perspective, of identity, of longing. The movement was not yet visible, but it was undeniably alive. There came a point when Lucifer could no longer hold this transformation as a private internal philosophy. Pride does not remain silent forever. What begins as a quiet reconsideration eventually demands expression. And so, in a way that was subtle but unmistakable, Lucifer stopped worshiping. He still sang. He still led. His voice still carried beauty and strength. But worship is not sound. It is surrender. And Lucifer's heart was no longer yielding to the one he once adored. His praise no longer rose from love. His melodies no longer bowed. Jesus knew. He had known before the first shift occurred. He had seen pride root itself where love once lived. And now, the moment had come when the quiet fracture in heaven had to be addressed. Not because the throne was threatened, it could never be, but because love required clarity. Silence would have allowed deception to spread like a slow plague. And so, in the heart of heaven, a gathering was called. Imagine the scene. The throne room, majestic beyond comprehension. A sea of glass reflecting a spectrum of colors no human language could name. The throne of God, radiant in a way that could not be looked at directly, yet brought peace rather than fear. Angels assembling in numbers beyond counting. Choirs silent now, not in reverence alone, but in anticipation. There was no war yet. There was only the awareness that something sacred was about to be spoken. Lucifer stood near the front, as he always had. His posture was as regal as ever. His wings carried the light as beautifully as they always had. To anyone who did not understand the heart, he looked unchanged. But the one who sees beneath the surface saw everything. Jesus stepped forward, not in anger, not in fire, not in thunder, but in a presence so full of truth that it made the moment weightless. His voice did not echo, it simply filled the space. Every being could hear him as though he spoke directly to them, that he addressed Lucifer by his original name, a name full of honor, identity, and love. There was no insult, no accusation, only clarity that he spoke of the beauty Lucifer had been given, the purpose he had been created for, the closeness they once shared. He spoke of the light that Lucifer reflected, not as limitation, but as privilege. He reminded him, gently, that all glory flows from the source, and to forget the source is to lose the meaning of glory entirely. Lucifer listened. But the heart that once softened in worship had hardened, not with hatred, but with certainty. He did not see himself as rebelling. He saw himself as awakening. In his mind, he was seizing destiny, not defying divinity. The tragedy of pride is that it convinces the heart that deception is revelation. Lucifer responded, not with rage, not with defiance shouted for all to hear. His voice was calm, his tone steady, his reasoning sound. He spoke of honor. He spoke of potential. He framed his desire not as replacing God, but as expanding glory, shared authority, shared worship, shared sovereignty. But the moment Lucifer suggested equality with the sun, a silence fell upon heaven so deep it felt like the fabric of eternity held its breath, not because the throne was threatened, but because the idea of comparison had never existed before. The Creator had never been weighed against creation. The eternal had never been measured against the formed. This was the moment when the angels would choose, not whose power was greater, for there was no question, but whose truth they would stand with. Would they remain in the flow of love and surrender, or would they follow the dream of self-exaltation disguised as enlightenment? And here is what made this confrontation devastating. Lucifer was not alone anymore. A third of the angels, beautiful, radiant beings whose voices had once joined in worship, now stood aligned with him. Not visibly, not in posture, but in the heart. They believed him. They believed his interpretation of glory. They believed they were rising, not falling. Jesus saw them too, not with condemnation, but with sorrow deeper than oceans. Because love values every heart, and the hearts that were turning away were not insignificant. They were known, cherished, created intentionally. What happened next did not begin with violence. It began with truth spoken clearly. Jesus declared what Lucifer had become, not by insult, but by definition. A being no longer reflecting light, but attempting to generate it. And since no creation can sustain itself as light, Lucifer had chosen separation from the source. Separation is darkness. Darkness is not punishment. Darkness is simply what remains when light is rejected. Heaven did not shatter in that moment. It simply aligned. Every angel now understood that this was not a matter of opinion, but identity, and the line between worship and rebellion had now been drawn, not by force, but by truth. And now, the response to truth would determine the destiny of heaven. Heaven had always known harmony. Harmony wasn't something taught there. It was simply the way everything existed. Every being had purpose. Every purpose flowed back into love. And love flowed from the Father through the Son. It was like light passing through crystal, pure and effortless. But once Lucifer turned away, that harmony didn't just bend. It fractured. It was like watching a flawless mirror crack from the center outward. Everyone could feel it. Every angel, every choir, every watcher. It was as if the very air of heaven had changed. Something sacred was now threatened. There was no battlefield at first. No sound of clash. No roar. Just a stillness that felt unnatural. The angels who remained loyal stood behind the throne, not because they were told to, but because their hearts were anchored in truth. They knew Jesus as more than a title. They knew him as the one through whom all life existed. But the angels who followed Lucifer stood with him, not out of certainty, but out of desire. Desire to be seen. Desire to be elevated. Desire to be something greater than they were created to be. Lucifer did not come in rage. There was no scream. He came dressed in beauty, calm, confident, with the kind of poise that made lesser beings feel small. He believed he was right. He believed heaven could be reshaped. He believed that glory could be shared, that worship could be redistributed, that authority could be negotiated. What he did not understand was that the throne of God isn't something held in place by force. It stands because the one who sits on it is the source of existence itself. To remove him would unravel reality. Jesus did not lift a hand. He did not argue. And yet his presence alone exposed Lucifer's intentions. Because true authority does not need to defend itself. It simply is. And when Lucifer saw that his light faded in the presence of the sun, something deep inside him ignited. Not passion, not conviction, but rage. Cold, silent rage. The kind that forms when love has been denied space to speak. This was the moment the war began. Not with weapons, but with a decision. Michael stepped forward. Not because he was stronger than Lucifer. Not because he had been waiting to fight, but because he loved Jesus. And love protects what is holy. His armor was not physical. His strength did not come from himself. It was the authority of heaven moving through him. When Michael speaks in Scripture, his words are simple, unwavering, and final. Who is like God? That was his sword. The truth that shattered pride. Lucifer stepped forward too. And when he did, the angels could see that something inside him had changed forever. His beauty was still there, but the light behind it was gone. What remained was brilliance without warmth, radiance without love, cold glory, a throne built on emptiness. The clash that followed was not chaos. It was decisive. Heaven does not fight with uncertainty. The loyal angels moved as one, not because they were commanded, but because truth naturally aligns itself. The rebellious angels fought in desperation, not realizing they had already lost the moment they withdrew from the source. You cannot win against the one who holds your existence together. You cannot overpower the light when the only reason you still shine is because the light allows you to exist. Lucifer fell, not because Jesus struck him, not because Michael crushed him, but because pride cannot stand in the presence of unchanging love. Pride collapses under truth. And the moment heaven revealed its allegiance, Lucifer's kingdom had no foundation to stand on. It had never been real. It was only an illusion built on self-worship. There was no joy in heaven when he fell. No celebration. Only silence. Silence the way a family feels silence when someone they loved chooses to walk away. Jesus did not look victorious. He looked grieved. Because victory without love is not triumph. It is sorrow. Lucifer and the angels who followed him were removed, cast out from the realm they once belonged to. Not because God hated them, but because heaven is a place built entirely on love. And love cannot coexist with a heart that has rejected it. Darkness cannot stay where light remains. The fall was not a punishment. It was the natural result of separation. And there, outside the gates of glory, Lucifer discovered the full weight of his decision. He had lost the one thing he did not realize he needed. Not power, not position, but relationship. That he lost the presence of Jesus. And that was the true tragedy of the rebellion. Not the war, not the fall, but the loss of a friendship that once shaped the music of heaven. So where was Jesus during Lucifer's rebellion? He was right there. Not absent, not silent, not uncertain. He stood as the eternal Word, the radiance of the Father's glory, the one through whom all things were made. He watched a beloved angel fall, not from lack of power, but because love never forces loyalty. Lucifer chose pride. Jesus stood in truth, and that same Jesus stands with us now. In a world full of noise, ego, pressure, and temptation, he calls us to a different path. A path of humility, of trust, of love freely given rather than demanded. The rebellion in heaven isn't just an ancient event. It's a mirror. Every day we choose pride or surrender, self-throne or God-throne. But you are not alone in that choice. The same Jesus who watched the first rebellion unfold is the same Jesus who walked among us, who died for us, who rose for us, and who still reaches for you. Oh, hold your heart steady. Let his voice be louder than the voice of pride. Let his light be stronger than the shadows you fight. And let his love be the reason you stand, because he is still king. He is still holy. He is still worthy. And he is still calling us home. That if this message touched you, taught you, or opened your eyes in any way, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you don't miss the next teaching. This is Gospel Insights, where we dive deep, reflect honestly, and grow spiritually together. Thank you for watching, and may grace and peace follow you wherever you go.